Good morning, welcome to the homestead. Today we're going to taste the very earliest apples I have that ripen in July. Now there are apples which have June in the name. I have two of them, Salem June and Carolina Red June, but they don't ripen in June. Nothing ripens in June here. So my earliest apples are July. I've had apples since early July. It's now kind of late July. So let's go pick some apples and taste them. Good morning. It is late July and apple season has arrived. These are 5 of my very earliest apples. These are kind of in order of ripening, but not really. July Red, Early Harvest, Summer Rose, Carolina Red June, Red Astrachan. It's hard to say Carolina without just a little bit of that because of my southern friends. I spent a little time there before. Yeah, let's taste some apples. This is the grafting knife that I commonly recommend. If someone's going to buy a grafting knife, I usually actually recommend that they just sharpen up a Swiss Army knife and try to learn with that. But they are nice, and this actually makes a nice fruit knife too because it's stainless, so you can get it all sticky and gooey and then just put it away and it doesn't get all rusty. So I'm going to sniff these apples to see which one's the most fragrant. Pretty good. Maybe a little better. Not quite. Good. This is a winner. It's also uniformly red. This is a very red apple and it reddens up right as it ripens. This has been my earliest apple, I would say. The thing about July Red is it has a long season. You know, I had the first apples I had to eat were this, and there's still apples on the tree that aren't ripe. So we're looking at probably a 3-week ripening season, which could be good or could be bad. I think for a lot of homeowners it's kind of good, but if you wanted to do, say, like a big old batch of applesauce or press some juice or something, it's actually totally inconvenient because they don't really keep that well. So this apple was developed in, I think, or released in 1962, New Jersey. And this is one of the parents of another apple we're going to take a look at that I talk about a lot, which is Williams Pride. So Williams Pride has a complex ancestry, but this is one of the apples. So this tastes surprisingly good this year. I mean, it's still a typical extra early apple. Like the very first early apples like this tend to have a thin, what I would call a thin presentation. They tend to be low in sugar, a little bit acidic. They're not richly flavored. They just have kind of a thin presentation. I don't know how else to say it. However, this is more rich, I would say, than most of them, and the flavor it has, even though it's not complex, really, it's maybe a little, it's really nice. One reference said it tasted like loganberries. I don't know what a loganberry tastes like, but I could see likening it to a berry flavor. So when you get these just right and you know, they're good. Yeah, that flavor though, this year that flavor is really good. Surprising. I'm encouraged by this apple actually at this point. Now Early Harvest, on the other hand, didn't seem ripe when the first of these were ripe, but then they all fell off the tree and I came out and they were just all on the ground and they had ripened, snuck up on me, ripened and fallen. While these, again, are still ripening over this long season. So these are basically overripe. So again, thin presentation, same thing. Possibly a little more sugar, not too much. Almost mealy, kind of going to like a spongy texture, but again, these are a little overripe. Definitely this is more of a cooking apple. For that, I'm sure it's quite good. You know, like both of these and all of these probably make good sauce and are good for throwing in pies early on in the season. Especially in the old days when people didn't have grocery stores, like getting these first early apples was a big deal. Like you could start making applesauce for the table and pies. Apple pie is like a staple, you know, it's not like just dessert. Okay, this is Summer Rose, at least that's what it's labeled as, and the pictures I could find indicate that there probably were 2 apples at least going under that name. I have some watercolors, I'll put them up here on the screen. This matches one of them, and the other ones are clearly a different apple that's more striped. Now it's interesting that this is called Summer Rose at all, because all it has is this little rose blush right here. You know, these are very similar, so maybe they have some heritage in common. Like if I was comparing this one and this one, yeah, that I could definitely say is the same apple. So, you know, who knows? They are very similar, but they seem to ripen a little different, and there are some differences. So I'm going to guess that they are different apples. They really do look a lot the same. They have the same russet pattern on the top. This one has a blush. Yeah. So who knows? And looking at old watercolors of early harvest, you know, I didn't go through the whole identification process or anything, but they look similar to this apple. Thin, one-dimensional flavor. This is Carolina Red June. It's kind of interesting. It has a lot of red pigmentation, like that goes all the way up into the stem. The skin is very red. It's uniformly red across the whole apple. When it's ripe, it's real dark like this. When you bite into it, you know, the pigment in the skin is strong enough that it carries, your teeth will crush it and stain the flesh of the apple. But whether it actually has any internal red staining, I haven't really been able to tell yet. Yeah, it does. There's some red staining around in here. So this apple is clearly more just kind of edible out of hand. It's less acidic than probably all of these, certainly than these. Not by a lot, but enough to notice. I'd say the sugar's a little higher too. The flavor is stronger than these, not as strong as this. Very pleasant, kind of peculiar or hard to place, but it's a neat flavor. It's kind of like a candy flavor maybe, but it's interesting and pleasant. I could see, like, especially these two in a pie together being excellent, which maybe I'll try to do that. I think it's the flavor that this does have. It really makes it a slightly richer apple than these, but I still wouldn't call it rich, and it still has the basic characteristics of these kind of early apples. Okay, this is Red Astrachan. Let's cut open this one. This is not an eating apple. You know, I never really want to eat one, and my friend Freddie Men, she's kind of an apple mentor of mine, put it well when he said that, you know, if he really, really wanted an apple really bad, he might eat one out of hand, but basically it's just really not that good to eat. My friend Tim Bates at the Apple Farm says that this is an amazing sauce apple, and I remember him saying that it even is better or as good as Gravenstein. I think he said it was better than Gravenstein, and for them to say that in this area, which is a big Gravenstein growing area where Gravenstein's a super popular apple for pies and sauce, is you know, something to pay attention to. Well, you can see why it made good sauce, because it's almost sauce-like already. The flesh is very soft, kind of grainy. Not much sugar at all. It's the least sweet of all of these. Definitely would have to add sugar to make good sauce out of this. You know, it's also pretty low in flavor. There's really not much to recommend that apple to put in your mouth and chew it up and swallow it. And none of these keep. You know, they're ripe. You eat them off the tree when they're at their best, and they usually don't do much, you know, past that. July Red. This is a really promising early apple. As far as eating, it's the best of the lot here. It's got a really unique, nice, fruity flavor that I'm growing fond of. Yeah. Second place for eating is Carolina Red June. I mean, it's worth eating, I would say. These really, you know, unless I didn't have any other fruit or really, really wanted an apple, I probably wouldn't eat those. Astrakhan lasts for eating. This year there's a lot of apples fruiting here. One tree has 100 varieties fruiting on it, and there's only 108 varieties left on that tree now. So out of 108, 100 are fruiting, and that gives you an idea of just how good of an apple year it is this year. Now on the rest of the property, most of the apples are fruiting, except for my seedlings, which take a long time. But even those, there's over 50 seedlings fruiting as well. I'm going to try to keep up better this year with documenting these apples as they go, getting good pictures of them, posting on Instagram, hopefully pretty regularly, all these different apples with tasting notes, maybe some historical notes and old quotes, you know, from old books about apples. So if you're interested in apples and you're not following me on Instagram, I would start. Greetings friends, I am Stephen Edholm from SkillCult.com. Today's video is basically a follow-up on a video I did about splitting a big oak log into staves like this so that they could be further, you know, processed and seasoned into staves like this to use for axe handles and whatever other kind of things. So today's video is basically going through processing a couple of these, and that'll provide us talking points about things, really important talking points about wood seasoning and wood shrinkage, hewing tips.